tuning in.
Whether you're, prepping for a major strategic meeting or just trying to catch up on the evolving landscape of business intelligence, or maybe you're just curious about how organizations are actually making decisions behind the scenes, you are in exactly the right place.
You really are. And today we have a fantastic set of source materials to explore.
We do. We're looking at a comprehensive slide deck, and it's focused on the foundations of data analysis.
It's a foundational topic, sure, but the implications are massive. The way modern organizations process information is fundamentally changing.
Right.
And the material we're reviewing today maps out exactly how that shift from, pure guesswork to evidence-based strategy actually happens.
And our mission for this deep dive is to really understand that exact transformation. We're going to explore how to take raw, disorganized data and turn it into a proactive business strategy.
Which is no small feat.
No, it's not. But the source material opens with this really compelling visual metaphor. It shows this completely chaotic jumble of blue and gray dots, just a total mess.
A literal cloud of noise.
Exactly. But then, through the process of analysis, those dots slowly organize, they align, and eventually they merge into a single, unified, massive orange arrow pointing forward.
It's a great visual.
It perfectly captures the goal here, right?
Yeah.
Taking messy reality and turning it into forward momentum.
It really sets the philosophical tone for the entire deck, too. The sources immediately draw this sharp contrast between two distinct ways of operating a business or even just managing a project.
Yeah.
On one side, you have the realm of raw intuition, what the deck cleverly illustrates as a sort of a tangled brain.
The tangled brain, yeah.
Right, it's the old way of doing things, relying entirely on gut feelings, hallway conversations, localized experience.
To go in with your gut.
Exactly. But the whole point of data analysis is moving away from that tangled guesswork and shifting toward the clarity of hard facts and evidence.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because we all know intuition has its place.
Sure.
Sometimes a seasoned manager's gut feeling is incredibly valuable. But gut feelings just don't scale.
They don't.
So what is the actual bridge between that localized intuition and a scalable, evidence-based strategy?
Well, the sources give us a very precise definition to start with.
Let's hear it.
They state that data analysis is the process of examining, organizing, cleaning, and interpreting data to discover useful information, patterns, and trends.
It's a rigorous process.
Yeah.
It's multi-step.
Highly rigorous.
You don't just, stare at a spreadsheet. You have to actively structure the data, remove the errors, and figure out what the numbers are actually trying to tell you.
To ground that abstract definition, the text provides a really great foundational micro-scenario.
Right, the shop owner.
Exactly. Consider a local shop owner who sits down at the end of the month to review their sales records, specifically to determine which single product sold the most.
Which sounds incredibly basic.
It does. It sounds so simple. But that is the purest form of data analysis. The reason this matters is the fundamental shift in methodology.
Yeah.
Historically, that shop owner might have just glanced around the store, noticed a few empty shelves, and used their intuition to guess what was popular.
Oh, we're out of blue shirts. Blue shirts must be the best seller.
Exactly. But by intentionally pulling the records and tallying the actual numbers, they're shifting from assumption to evidence.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
You don't need a massive server farm to do data analysis. You just need a commitment to letting the records dictate your understanding rather than your feelings.
That's the core of it.
Building on that foundation, the source material maps out 3 overlapping goals for any data analyst or decision maker, kind of like a Venn diagram of objectives.
Right.
The first objective is simply to understand what is happening in a business, system, or environment at any given moment.
That is the absolute baseline. You cannot effectively optimize a system if you don't have an accurate, evidence-based picture of its current state.
Exactly. Then the second objective is to find hidden patterns and relationships within that data.
Connecting the dots.
Right. This is where you move beyond just taking inventory and start seeing how different pieces of the puzzle influence one another.
Yeah.
And finally, the third objective, which is really the ultimate goal, is to make decisions based on that data. You understand the present, you identify the underlying patterns, and you use that insight to drive a concrete decision.
I think this is a perfect moment to connect this directly to you, the listener. Think about a major initiative or a team you are currently managing right now.
Yeah, think about your day-to-day.
How often are you operating out of that first objective, trying to grasp what is currently happening, but relying purely on the tangled brain approach?
More often than we'd like to admit, probably.
Right. Maybe you're basing your understanding of team performance on a few recent emails or just the subjective feeling rather than hard metrics. If you were to pause, gather the actual records, clean that data, and look at the facts, how would that shift your perspective? When you finally reach that third objective and have to make a crucial leadership decision, having an organized foundation of evidence fundamentally changes your risk profile.
It takes so much of the pressure off your intuition.
It really does.
Now, to help us navigate this transition from looking at disorganized records to making those confident decisions, the sources introduce a really powerful framework.
The analytics maturity curve.
Yes, the analytics maturity curve. It plots our journey from hindsight to foresight.
Hindsight to foresight.
Yeah. As you move along this curve, you transition from analyzing the past to actively shaping the future. And it's broken down into 4 distinct stages.
This curve is essentially the roadmap for modern business intelligence. It demonstrates that data analysis isn't a monolithic skill. It's an evolution in capability.
Let's walk through these 4 stages. Stage 1 is the entry point descriptive analysis.
Right.
The anchor question here is the most fundamental question a business can ask. What happened?
Simple enough.
According to the sources, the focus is strictly on summarizing historical data. The methods used are the ones we interact with every single day. Averages, percentages, standard charts, and tables.
Descriptive analysis is the bedrock. It doesn't attempt to interpret the deeper meaning, and it certainly doesn't project into the future. It just states the historical facts as clearly as possible.
The micro scenario the text provides for this is a monthly report showing that exactly 500 products were sold in March.
Yep.
That's it. A factual historical figure that perfectly answers what happened.
And while knowing your historical baseline is undeniably useful and vastly superior to just guessing your sales figures, it is only the very beginning of the maturity curve.
Right, it's just the start.
Knowing you sold 500 units is a pure fact, but it lacks strategic context. It doesn't tell you if selling 500 units is a massive success or a catastrophic failure compared to market expectations.
Right.
And it gives you zero direction on what to do tomorrow. To extract strategic value, you have to move to the next stage.
Which brings us to stage 2, diagnostic analysis. If the first stage asks what happened, the anchor question for stage 2 is the natural follow-up. Why did it happen?
This is where analysis becomes investigative.
Okay.
The focus of diagnostic analysis is drilling down into the data sets to identify the actual causes of specific outcomes. You're no longer looking at isolated metrics.
You're comparing things.
Exactly. You're comparing different variables and cross-referencing different time periods. The sources specifically list methods like correlation, variance analysis, and root cause analysis for this stage.
I want to pause on those methods for a second because the text gives a specific scenario here that I found really interesting. It talks about analyzing a sudden, sharp drop in sales and discovering it was entirely due to website downtime.
Right.
Now, I have to ask, diagnosing a broken website server sounds like basic IT monitoring. Where does the advanced data analyst actually come into play here?
That is a really great distinction to make. If you're just an IT professional watching a server ping rate, yes, that's basic monitoring. But what's fascinating here is how diagnostic analysis connects entirely separate business silos.
Oh, I see.
Imagine you're the VP of sales. You look at your descriptive dashboard and see a 40% drop in revenue for a specific Tuesday. Without diagnostic analysis, your intuition might lead you to blame the sales team.
Sure.
Or assume a new competitor entered the market. Or decide you need to fire your marketing agency. You'd be reacting to the symptom.
Ah, I see. The data analyst comes in and uses correlation to match the sales data with the IT server logs.
Precisely. The analyst looks at the variance, how far that Tuesday's sales deviated from the historical average, and then runs a correlation analysis against other internal metrics.
Fascinating.
They overlay the sales timeline with the website uptime logs and perform a root cause analysis, which definitively proves the drop wasn't a marketing failure at all, it was a technical one. Diagnostic analysis prevents leaders from making incredibly costly mistakes based on misdiagnosed problems.
That makes the value of this stage so much clearer. It forces you to treat the underlying disease rather than just panicking over the symptom.
Exactly.
But even with the investigative power of diagnostic analysis, we're still looking backward. We're still firmly in the realm of hindsight, figuring out what happened yesterday and why.
Correct.
Here's where it gets really interesting. The sources now pivot us to the second half of the analytics maturity curve. We are crossing the threshold from analyzing the past to predicting the future.
This is a monumental leap.
Yeah.
Moving from hindsight to foresight represents a massive jump in technical complexity, but it yields an exponential jump in business value.
Stage 3 on the curve is predictive analysis. The anchor question completely changes. We're no longer dissecting history. We're asking what is likely to happen in the future.
Right.
The focus, according to the sources, is taking all of that clean historical data we gathered in the first 2 stages and using it to build models that forecast future trends. The methods get significantly more advanced here.
They really do.
We leave simple spreadsheets behind and start utilizing statistical modeling and machine learning.
The operative word in this stage is likely. Predictive analysis doesn't provide a crystal ball. It cannot guarantee the future.
Right, it's not magic.
But by feeding vast amounts of historical realities into advanced mathematical models, it drastically narrows down the probabilities of what will happen next.
The scenario the text provides is predicting that sales will increase during the upcoming holiday season based entirely on past data. But how is that different from just a manager looking at last year's chart and saying, hey, December is usually good?
It's really a matter of scale and precision. A human looking at last year's chart is using basic heuristics. A machine learning model in the predictive stage is analyzing the last 10 years of December sales, factoring in external variables like historical inflation rates, weather patterns, supply chain lead times,
Oh.
and giving you a highly specific probabilistic forecast. And the reason this is so vital is that it allows an organization to prepare rather than merely react. If you stop at descriptive analysis, you find out in January that December was chaotic, and you realize you left money on the table because you were understaffed.
Too late by then.
Exactly. But if you utilize predictive analysis, your models alert you in October that demand will spike by exactly 22%. You hire seasonal staff early. You optimize your inventory. You adapt to the reality before it actually arrives.
The ability to prepare based on statistical probability is incredibly powerful. But we still haven't reached the peak of the curve. There's one final stage.
The summit?
Stage 4, prescriptive analysis. The anchor question here shifts to the ultimate strategic directive. What should be done?
Right.
The focus is no longer just on forecasting the weather. It's about suggesting the exact actions or decisions you need to take to navigate it. The system combines the data, the predictive forecasts, and the overarching business rules to recommend concrete solutions.
This is the absolute zenith of the maturity curve. You've evolved from asking what happened to why it happened to what will happen, and now the data model is functioning as a strategic advisor. It's explicitly detailing the optimal action to execute.
The methods listed for this stage are the most complex in the entire deck. Optimization algorithms, heuristics, and decision-making logic. We hear words like algorithms thrown around a lot, but what does this actually look like in practice for a business?
Let's break those terms down. An optimization algorithm is basically a complex math equation that looks at millions of possible scenarios to find the absolute best outcome given your specific constraints like budget or time limits.
Yeah.
But sometimes finding the perfect mathematical answer takes too long, even for a computer. That's where heuristics come in.
Heuristics.
Yeah, heuristics are essentially practical rule of thumb shortcuts the system uses to find a good enough or highly effective solution quickly. The system uses these tools, combined with human-programmed decision-making logic, to output a directive.
The scenario the sources provide for this really crystallizes it for me. The system recommends a specific discount strategy to boost sales in a low-performing region.
Perfect example.
So it isn't just saying, hey, our predictive model shows sales will be low in the Northwest next quarter. It takes that prediction, runs it through an optimization algorithm, and says sales will be low in the Northwest, therefore you should apply a 15% targeted discount on these 3 specific product lines to maximize your remaining profit margin.
Yes.
It hands you the exact marching orders.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this fourth stage is the ultimate realization of the mission we established at the beginning of this deep dive. Think back to that initial concept of turning chaotic, random dots into a unified, forward-pointing arrow.
Right, from the very first slide.
Prescriptive analysis is the tip of that arrow. The system has done the tedious work of examining, organizing, diagnosing, and predicting, and it has synthesized all of that into a proactive, executable business strategy.
It is fascinating to see the evolution laid out so clearly. To ensure this remains practical, the source material includes a brilliant summary slide called the Data Analysis Quick Reference Matrix.
I love that slide.
It's so helpful. It takes the entire journey we just discussed and maps it onto a clean grid. You have the 4 stages stacked up: descriptive, diagnostic, predictive, and prescriptive.
Right.
Next to them, you have the anchor questions. What happened? Why did it happen? What is likely to happen? And what should be done? And finally, those core scenarios lined up for comparison. 500 products sold versus a drop due to website downtime versus predicting a holiday sales increase versus applying a specific discount strategy.
Having that matrix as a mental model is incredibly useful for any professional. There's a vital conceptual detail embedded at the very bottom of that final slide that we really have to highlight.
Oh, the continuum.
Yes. Beneath the grid, there is an arrow spanning from left to right. On the far left end of the arrow, positioned under the descriptive and diagnostic stages, is the word information. On the far right end, under the predictive and prescriptive stages, is the word action. This represents an underlying continuum that governs the entire field of data analysis.
Information to action. That really is the crux of it, isn't it?
It absolutely is. It visually represents that when you're operating on the left side of the matrix, dealing strictly with the past, you are merely gathering information. You're building situational awareness.
Which is important, but
the ultimate goal of corporate data analysis is not just to be the smartest person in the room with the most historically accurate dashboards.
right.
As you climb the maturity curve and move to the right side of that continuum, that information must be converted into action. Data that doesn't drive a decision or an action is essentially just expensive trivia.
Expensive trivia. I
Yeah.
love that.
The entire architecture of the maturity curve is designed to push you relentlessly toward the right side, toward making an evidence-based decision and executing on it.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? It means that data analysis is not just about generating aesthetically pleasing charts to paste into a quarterly slideshow.
Definitely not.
It is not an isolated technical skill reserved entirely for the IT or analytics departments. It's a strategic, step-by-step evolution designed to clear away the fog of blind intuition, replace it with a rock-solid foundation of facts, and tell you exactly what levers you need to pull next to succeed.
Exactly. It's about building a system where evidence scales and supports your strategic goals rather than relying on localized guesswork.
We have covered an immense amount of ground today. We started with the core definition of transforming chaotic records into organized trends.
Yep.
We looked at the humble shop owner choosing to rely on sales receipts instead of a gut feeling. We broke down the 3 overlapping objectives of understanding the present state, finding hidden patterns, and driving decisions.
The whole journey.
And then we climbed the analytics maturity curve. We moved from the hindsight of descriptive and diagnostic analysis, asking what happened and why, all the way to the foresight and proactive power of predictive and prescriptive analysis, asking what will happen and exactly what we should do about it.
Moving from pure information to definitive action.
Exactly. And the beautiful thing is, whether you're that small business owner looking at a handful of weekly receipts or a corporate executive utilizing advanced machine learning heuristics, the fundamental principles of this journey remain exactly the same.
It's a phenomenal framework that brings a lot of clarity to a really complex field.
It really is.
But as we wrap up, looking at this continuum from historical information to future action, the material raises a really provocative question, something I want you, the listener, to think about long after this discussion ends.
Okay, let's hear it.
We know that the absolute peak of this curve, prescriptive analysis, relies entirely on historical data and trained algorithms to tell us what optimal action we should take next.
Right. It looks deeply at the past to tell us exactly what to do tomorrow.
But what happens to our highly sophisticated data models when an entirely unprecedented global event occurs? Think of a massive unforeseen supply chain collapse, a sudden technological paradigm shift, or a global crisis.
A true black swan event.
Exactly, something that has absolutely zero historical precedent. In those moments, the models have no training data to look back on.
Wow, yeah.
When the algorithms face the great unquantifiable unknown, how much room must we leave at the very top of that maturity curve for human intuition? Even in a world dominated by prescriptive data, does that tangled brain still hold the ultimate trump card when the historical data simply runs out?
That is a brilliant thought to leave on. The data models can take us to the absolute edge of the known world, but navigating the truly unknown still requires that distinctly human touch.
Well said.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you take these foundational concepts and start looking at the metrics in your own professional life, your projects, your budgets, your team's goals, not just as historical records, but as a proactive roadmap for action. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep relying on the evidence.